Hey everyone, this is Mike. Today is going to be story time. I'm going to be telling the story of my friend Albin, who I met about 12 years ago, and who unfortunately enough ended up passing away about a week ago, and then earlier today was his funeral. So to kind of deal with losing him, so to speak, I kind of just wanted to tell our story, how we met, what we did, because we did some really good stuff together. And yeah, that's just kind of going to be it for today. I didn't really feel like making the usual normal video, so to speak, and I just kind of wanted to get this off of my chest, so to speak. So our story starts about 12 years ago when I was in second grade in secondary school. If you don't know how the school system works here in Belgium, basically as soon as you're 12 years old you go to, or once you're like 12 years old you finish school there. Once you finish primary school you go to secondary school, and that lasts about 6 years from when you're 12 all the way from when you're 18, and then you graduate and you can either go and find a job or move on to college or university. We don't really have the alternative of high school, what a lot of other countries have. Now, in my second year of secondary school, I was around 13, 14 years old at that point, I had a girlfriend. I had a girlfriend for about 6 months at that point. At that point, of course, I would have loved her as much as you can when you're that young. And at some point I ended up going to the city where my school is located. I lived about an hour bus drive away from my school, and I had to go there on the weekend to basically go work on a group project with some of my other classmates there. Now, as I stepped foot on the bus, as I started driving to school, my girlfriend ended up stepping on the bus as well, because she was going to meet up with a friend of hers as well, and I was like, okay, it's just fine. And then we both went there, and then we also drove back home. Now, the friend that she was meeting was not one of her girlfriends from class, but it was some random dude that I've never seen before. Of course, you can guess who it is already at this point. And a couple of days later, I found out that they actually just went on a date together, and she broke up with me to go with him. So at that point, I got to know Albin, the guy who stole my girlfriend at that point. And since, of course, me and my girlfriend, we were together for 6 months, we shared a lot of friends, so she would still hang out with me and my friends quite a bit. And then naturally, of course, Albin would come to join us during like our playtime, whatever it's called in school. So I kind of got to know the guy, and he was a pretty fun dude to hang around with. Of course, at that point, he was still kind of the guy that stole my girlfriend of 6 months. But still, it was a fun guy, and we kind of became friends. Now, of course, once the relationship that they had was over in like 2 weeks or something, was very short, we of course didn't really see him that much anymore. But then I got to meet him again later down the line when I was about 16, 17 years old in 5th grade, because that's where I switched classes. So I started off my secondary school career, if you can call it that. For the first 2 years, I did like the most generalized thing that's possible. Year 3 and 4. You got to choose like a little bit more specific stuff. So at that point I decided to choose art, because I was a very big fan of art. I wanted to do architecture as I like went down in the school system, and then art was kind of like the course that you had to take before you could go into architecture. So I took art with sub-course architecture, and then when I went to 5th grade, that's where I chose to more specifically go for architecture. Now, after the first semester, we have 3 semesters in a school year. I decided that this was not really the course for me. I had really bad grades. I also wasn't all that motivated to study for it. So I decided to just stop the architecture course and switch over to IT, which is some of my other passions. I love building PCs now. So I basically wanted to do something with computers and IT. So that's when I decided to make the switch. And I ended up meeting up with Albin again because he was also following the same course. And when I made the switch, this was of course halfway through the school year just about. And they were a really tight-knit group. It was only a class of 7 people. I would be the 8th person joining them. And prior, in the first semester of the school year, we also had a team building trip that we did for 2 days, where we just did a lot of team building. So they were a really tight-knit group, and then I kind of just got thrown together there as well, as like the old guy in the class, so to speak. So, of course, not knowing anyone other than Albin, we kind of got to talking. Like, he also knew me still, of course. He kind of remembers me as well from back in the day when he stole my girlfriend. And we just kind of hit it up, we joked about it. And we actually found out that we had a lot of interests in common. Of course, everybody in that class were all gamers because we were all interested in gaming and computers and that kind of stuff. But me, Albin, and another guy, Abderrahman, we were also really into anime and manga. at that point, like I'd been in manga ever since I was a kid, ever since I was like 8 years old or something like that. Eventually, when I was in art class, I got to know a lot of people that were also into manga, but they also let me know that anime existed, because I didn't know prior to that. The anime was a thing, and back then I was really into it. Right now I don't really watch that much anymore. But still, back then I used to watch a lot, and Albin used to watch a lot of anime as well. So we had some shared interest. We used to watch a lot of shows together, talked about some shows that we liked, shared some of our passions. We basically met up a lot after school time as well, whether it was to game together, whether it was to watch some anime, whether it was to crash at his place after a party because I was too drunk to take a bus ride home, or because the buses just didn't go anymore because it was that late in the night. And we basically just shared a lot of good times together. Now, eventually, of course, we all end up graduating around the age of 18. One of our guys was very surprised that he got to graduate because he just did fuck all school year. But yeah, it was a good time. We graduated at 18 and we kind of went our separate ways. Albin went to a college relatively far away from where I live, which was still relatively close by to where he lived, but it was basically the same commute that I made every day to go to that school, that secondary school. But if I wanted to go to the same college as they went to, then it would be like a 2-hour bus drive for me, so that was a little bit too much. So I decided to go to the other side of the little province that we're in, into the other city, which was still about an hour commute for me, but then of course would be a 2-hour commute for them. So that's where we kind of split paths. Eventually I ended up dropping out from college because it really wasn't for me. I ended up getting a job. And then about 3 years later is when our paths crossed again, or well, actually 4 years. But basically what happened was I'd been working for about 3 years at that point. I was about to turn 21 and I wanted to do kind of something special because I kind of wanted to get away from everything. I've been working pretty much non-stop from 3 years. Whenever I had a vacation from work, I would just spend it at home playing video games because that's what I do. So I kind of just wanted to get away from the stress of work and also the stress from my home as well, because my mom, she had to deal with cancer at some point, which was of course very stressful for the rest of my family as well, because she could die because of it, of course. Now she's totally fine, don't worry about it, my mom is fine. But yeah, so, oh my retainer finished the adventure. Anyways. So I just wanted to get away from everything, and I thought 21st birthday, that is also kind of a special time, so to speak, because 21 is kind of a special birthday here. So I decided, since I did have a week of a vacation, I decided to go to Japan for a week. I went on a solo trip to Japan for that week. It took about like 6 days that I was there. And it was just me, my backpack, and my camera. And of course, a lot of people from work, other friends that I still talk to, they knew I was going. And they were all like, oh, show us some pictures when you get back home, because I'm really interested to see when you do so. Because of course, Japan's the other side of the world. It's like an 11-hour flight to get there. And it's very different culture-wise as well than what we have here. So they were all really interested to hear and see about that journey. So I just basically threw all of my photos on Facebook and shared the rest of that trip with some of my friends. And now, of course, since Facebook is a pretty open place, Albin got to see those pictures as well, to which he immediately messaged me and said, hey Michael, if you ever end up going to Japan again, let me know, because I would love to come with you as well. And of course, I wanted to go back as well, because I had just gone for that week. Later down that year, I went for another 2 weeks with some internet buddies of mine. One was somebody that I knew, one was someone that I didn't know yet, but actually was a really nice dude, and I still keep in touch with him every now and then. So really glad that I got to meet him as well. And then I was planning on going back again at some point. One of my colleagues at work was also interested in going, so we'd already kind of planned to go the next year. And then Albin asked me whether or not we were going again, so I said, you know what, we're going next year. Do you want to come with us? And then basically a year went past, and we went on another 2-week trip to Japan. We first went to Nagano, where we got to meet the monkeys in the mountains. We climbed Mount Nekodake as well, after we like literally strolled around town for like 3 hours trying to find the entrance to the hiking trail, only to figure out it was literally a 5-minute walk away from the bus stop where we had to take the bus. So that was kind of funny as well in its own right. Got to see some really beautiful places that I hadn't seen before. Also got to see a couple of places that I had been before, but I hadn't been to that specific place yet. Like for example in Kyoto, Arashiyama is a little like town, so to speak, inside of Kyoto. It's really beautiful, has some delicious food as well, and also has a monkey mountain that you can climb. And the first time I was there with my two internet buddies, we climbed one side of the mountain where the monkeys were, and then when I went back with Albin and my colleague, then we climbed the other one where there was a little temple in the mountain itself, where we kind of like got to rest a little bit from the climb up there. Which was really beautiful. And then we also went to Tokyo to kind of finish our trip. If you're an anime fan, you have to go to Akihabara, because that is of course the anime slash manga town, so to speak, inside of Tokyo or inside of Japan in general. So if you're an anime fan, Akihabara definitely a worthy visit. And that kind of concluded our trip. We saw some really cool things, climbed and hiked a lot around as well, which was a lot of fun. Very tiring journey, but I do think that those journeys are the best in my opinion. I like to see a lot of things, visit a lot of temples. We saw some parks, we hiked up some mountains, and basically it was just a really good journey altogether. And that is of course where we kind of split paths again. We of course still kept in touch over the internet, because keeping in touch with people on the internet is pretty easy, of course, with all of the social media that we have nowadays. But that was kind of the last trip that we did together, the trip to Japan, something that he still talked about a lot with all of his friends. Today as well at the funeral they showed a bunch of the pictures from our trip together there as well, as it is something that he ended up talking about quite a bit with some of his friends even to this day. And yeah, that's just kind of our story. It started about 12 years ago with him stealing my girlfriend back then, and then eventually we got really good friends when we ended up being in the same class together in IT, and then we went on this beautiful trip together to Japan. So yeah, that's our story. That's kind of what I wanted to share with you guys today. I'm starting to cry here, so I'm just gonna end the video there. If you're still here and listening, thank you very much for listening to my story. Hopefully tomorrow it won't be as depressing as this one. But yeah, that's gonna be it for me. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.